The 3 hours, sorry, 2.5, 3 hours that we sat waiting for the flight, it was delayed. It was delayed by an hour and 40 minutes. So we had about 3 hours to wait. We just found a small cafe. David didn't drink anything. We just had a walk around. Dave bought a book. He loved to read. I was just kind of sitting there, just amazed at everything at the airport, all the noises and the smells and, the screeching, screaming kids and all the different nationalities and stuff, And basically all I could think about was Jenny and Connor, and my heart sank deeper and deeper. I really felt like I was letting them down. I felt like I was, I felt like I was doing to Connor what my dad did to me when we were younger, and that was leave my mum. And David saw this, and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him, and he says, look, Cole, he says, you're not leaving. He says, you're just going to come with me. He says, and you're going to make your life better. He goes, and if Jenny wants to come over, by then, he goes, you'll have your own wee place. He says, and, you'll be working for me. You'll be running my dive operations and stuff. He says, and you'll be making money. He says, and you'll be able to, to afford to take care of them. And he says, don't be thinking anything negative. He says, from now on, he goes, you have to put your mind in a positive place. You've got to think of the positive things. You can't think of, you can't go downhill in this, you know what I mean? He says, if you go downhill in this, he goes, you'll beat yourself. You won't even get on the plane. And he was right. So he handed me the photographs again. He goes, here, sit and look at these. He goes, just imagine yourself, he goes, Carl, sitting on the beach, he goes, with a pina colada. I didn't even know what a fucking pina colada was back then. He says, with a pina colada, he goes, or a rum, he says, a rum and coke or something. And I didn't even drink, so, I just kind of sat there. And I says, imagine myself with a coke. So I sat looking at all these photographs, and my mind just slowly got back into a good place. And, and David was very inspirational, and he'd been through a lot of shit in his life, and the military had taught him, to be always push forward. So I decided, I'd sitting at the table in the cafe, that I was going to push forwards, and I was going to try to remain positive. And no matter how much my heart was breaking for Jenny and Connor, I was just going to push forward, and I was going to make something of myself. I was the only one in my family, out of my two brothers and sisters, that had this opportunity just basically given to them. Ticket was bought, plane, a place to go, a place to stay when I got there, learning something else, learning a new skills, many skills, and just starting a new life. So back then, there was no computers, there was no mobile phones. This is 1992, August 1992. No mobile phones, all letters were handwritten. And when I got to Belize, I found that it took 3 weeks for a handwritten letter to get to the UK, and another 3 weeks or 4 weeks possibly, if you got it, if it didn't get lost or stolen, to get that back again. So, it was a massive wake-up call for me. Yes, we had fax machines, but none of my family had a fax machine. So it was completely different. So, we heard the boarding call for the plane. We got up, we headed through. It was only a backpack I had. It wasn't even a suitcase. So David had 2 suitcases, which he'd bought stuff for, Sue, and the house and medicines and everything that he needed that he couldn't get, down in Belize or on San Pedro. And so we checked that in, and we went to the boarding gate, and it was American Airlines, and the plane was fucking huge. I had never seen anything like it at all. You know what I mean? I'd never really been close to an airplane, and it was 747. And at the boarding gate, there was only about 30-40 people. So Dave, he's rubbing his hands together. Fuck, this is great, Carl. He goes, there's not that many people on the plane. He goes, we're going to have loads of space. He goes, you know what I mean? He says, let's go. So anyway, we got on the plane. Sorry, we handed our tickets. We got checked, and we went down, and we were greeted at the plane door. Beautiful looking air hostesses. Your seat is this side. Your seat is this side. And Dave and I were basically in the same aisle, but when we got down there, and everybody was there was loads of empty spaces. So, the stewardess, or whatever you call them now, air hostesses came down. They checked out our seatbelts, and David says, can we? And she says, yep, plenty of space. She goes, make yourselves comfortable. So we hit the middle row. I was at the window, and we hit the middle row, and there was 4 seats, and I didn't know kind of what to do. So David, he pulled up the armrests and made a bed, and he goes, once we take off call, he says, and we get level, he says, and the seatbelt sign comes off, he goes, get your head down. There's little pillows up here, there's a blanket, whatever you need. I was like sitting there. So I sat at the window seat. I didn't even hear the safety briefing. I was staring out the window. I didn't hear the safety briefing. I didn't hear anything anybody said. I didn't hear anything that David told me, and I was just on another planet. I couldn't believe this was happening. And I was broken inside, thinking about Jenny and Connor, and yeah, that was the hardest decision I think that I'd ever made in my life, was to just basically up and leave, and leave Connor behind. It was really tough. David, on the other hand, he could have slept on broken glass, while his balls were being electrocuted with a 12-volt battery, and that was something that he'd learned in the military, is get your head down when you can, and eat when you can, and drink when you can. And so when we leveled off at the plane, and the seatbelt sign, I didn't know any of this stuff. I had no clue about this type of stuff. I think I kept my seatbelt on the whole time. I think I went to the toilet once, and I sat and stared out of the window, I think the whole trip. I think it was about 8 hours later, the seatbelt warning sign came on, and we were going to descend into Miami. I'd never seen anything like this. I'd never seen anything like it at all. I wasn't nervous flying. I had no problems at all with it. I enjoyed it. It was fantastic. And we started to descend. Dave woke up, seatbelt on, seat upright, looking across at me, big smile, and he just said to me, "Cole, this is where your life begins." He says, "This is where your life begins, buddy." And he says, "I'll take care of you." He says, "You take care of me." He says, "You have my back, I'll have your back. You take care of me." And I didn't realize what David meant when he said, "You have my back," until a bit later on. Anyway, we descended into Miami. We touched down, and we taxied to the terminal, and instead of walking down a gangway into the terminal, we had to walk down the stairs and across. And when that fucking plane door opened, I had hair back then, I always kept my hair short. I always had like a crew cut, and I opened that door. When that door opened and that heat hit me, I thought my face had been peeled with a hot scraper. The heat was unreal. It took me back, and it took my breath out of my body. And David, he just out of the plane, down the steps. I said thank you to the young lady that was at the door. Thank you, and enjoy your stay. And I walked down after David down them steps to the terminal, and we walked, I would say, about 100 feet, and the sweat was lashing off me. I don't think I'd ever, Northern Ireland's mostly always cold, and the sweat began to run off me in like a river. And I couldn't believe how much I'd sweated walking from the door of the airplane into the door of the terminal. And it was like walking from hell into the Arctic. Once we got inside, the cold air was just absolutely freezing, and your clothes just stuck to you. It was a feeling I'd never had before. I never was as glad to get out of that heat like that in my life, and get into the cold air. It was crazy. It was crazy, incredible. And I followed David in to the airport, and into where we pick our bags up. And again, there wasn't that many people, but once we got into the terminal, into the baggage area, there was so many baggage rails. I had no clue. I just followed Dave, and then David always says to me, "Look up," he says, "and you'll see the flight number, he says, on your ticket, and you'll see the terminal that you're going to go to pick up your bag. He says, and always follow that, he goes, and you can't go wrong.